Fox News legal analyst Lis Wiehl and Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano join us now with their analysis. Welcome to you both. So we've been listening here to Carmen Ortiz, the U.S. attorney, speak, and she said something very interesting, I thought. She said that this was not a religious crime that was being prosecuted here, but purely political crime to intimidate and coerce the U.S. Lis, your reaction to that?
That's part of the act of terrorism, this terrorism, and the prosecution needed to show that all the way. And by the way, I just want to comment on this news report that we just heard from the prosecutors. They are going by the book as to what they can say and what they cannot say in the ethical codes of prosecutions. But that was critical for the prosecution's case to show this was terrorism, not some kind of religious belief.
All right, Judge Napolitano, please weigh in here. I want to hear your thoughts on the comments that we just heard from the U.S. attorney.
Well, Lis is correct, and the U.S. attorney is correct. The evidence was not one of religious fervor taken out of control. The evidence was pure and simple terrorism, which in federal law is defined as the use of violence to change the policies of the government. So in this case, this was a classic, by the book, as Lis said, prosecution in which they methodically demonstrated the use of violence, horrific violence, in order to scare the public into inducing them to change the policies of the government. Obviously, it failed, and the surviving perpetrator of this is now subject to the best form of due process and the fairest prosecutorial system on the planet. But there's no evidence of religious fervor as animating either of the Tsarnaev brothers, from my understanding of the facts in the case.
I want to get to something else Carmen Ortiz had to say. She said that the team did not come lightly to the decision to go for the death penalty. And as you know, there were two choices in this case, the death penalty or life in prison. Those were the only two options being considered, at least to you. So this is difficult for Massachusetts because this is a state that has not liked the death penalty.
No, well, they don't have the death penalty in the state. Now, let me tell you, she talked a lot about process in that news conference. Let me tell you a little bit about that because I've been part of that process. As you're a federal prosecutor, you cannot just say, even in your own office, you can go to the U.S. attorney and say, I want to prosecute this as a death penalty case. It doesn't work that way, Gerri. They have to go, they being the prosecutors, go through a funnel, a system, all the way to then Attorney General Holder to say, yes, you could prosecute this. It is not something that is done by one office. It is a long process. It's rarely done in the federal system that you go for a death penalty.
And back to the judge, if we still have him there, your view on this, the death penalty in Boston and the jury, 14 and a half hours. What does that tell you? That seemed like a very quick decision-making process to me.
Well, Lisa and I were discussing this earlier on Liz Clayman's show, and I was surprised at the verdict because the population base here is so stridently and has been so consistently against the death penalty. And in the case of the chain of command that Lis described, you have the former Attorney General, Eric Holder, himself against the death penalty. He's been the subject of a lot of criticism, particularly by our colleagues, certainly by Lis and me. But in this case, he put aside his own moral view of the law and looked at the standards for the application of the death penalty and concluded that the facts in this case, if they could be proven, and of course we now know that they were, fit within the federal guidelines for the death penalty, and he authorized it.
I want to bring something up here because we're talking about Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Tsarnaev brothers, over and over and over again. There are victims here. 4 people dead, 2 young women, a boy, a baby, 8-year-old Martin Richard, Sean Collier, a police officer. I believe we have those pictures of the victims here.
That's
we shouldn't lose sight. People died. People were maimed.
Hundreds
were
270,
injured.
right.
And, you know, as we look at this, has justice been served here, Lis?
I believe so. I believe that if we are a country that has a death penalty, whether you're for it or not, the point is that we do. And in the federal system, there are many obstacles to get to the signing off of the death penalty, as the judge has pointed out. But if we are to have a death penalty, and then you look at the heinousness of the crime, the aggravating factors, the age of the boy that was killed, the MIT officer, all of that, the lack of remorse, Gerri. There was no remorse on this man's face until, at one point, He looked remorseful, he looked emotional, not remorseful, but emotional when his aunt took the stand because she missed him, not when the victims and the families took the stand. She showed no emotion then. And I think that's what the jury saw.
We're going to have to leave it there. Lis and Judge Napolitano, thank you so much.